The air in the grand ballroom was thick with anticipation. 200 pairs of eyes, reflecting the glint of crystal chandeliers, were fixed on the stage. It was the annual Leadership Summit, a moment meant for celebration and motivation. But for me, it became an arena. A place where my career, my reputation, and my very sense of self would be brutally assaulted. The microphone hummed, a prelude to a storm I never saw coming. This wasn't just a bad day, it was the genesis of a reckoning. He stood there, my boss, radiating an artificial warmth that masked a predatory gleam. His smile, usually reserved for clients, was now directed at me, a cruel prelude to his performance. He began to speak, his voice booming, ostensibly praising my team's recent project. But then, the pivot. A subtle shift in tone, a pointed finger. He began dissecting my contributions, not in a private feedback session, but piece by agonizing piece, under the harsh glare of every peer, every senior executive, and every direct report. It was an interrogation disguised as a critique. His words, laced with condescension and thinly veiled scorn, chipped away at my professional standing. He questioned my judgment, my leadership, even my fundamental understanding of the project we had, until moments ago, been celebrating as a success. The silence from the audience was deafening, punctuated only by my boss's relentless monologue. I felt the heat rising in my cheeks, a primal shame washing over me. In that moment, surrounded by my colleagues, I was utterly, completely, and publicly diminished. It was a calculated, deliberate act of professional assassination. When he finally finished, the applause was tepid, almost apologetic. I walked off that stage, not with my head held high, but with a crushing weight on my shoulders. The glances I received were a mix of pity and awkwardness. Some avoided my eyes, others offered weak, mumbled condolences. The humiliation festered, a venomous seed planted deep within me. I knew, with absolute certainty, that I couldn't let this stand. This moment, designed to break me, would instead forge an unyielding resolve. My career, his career, a choice had been made, though unspoken. That night, the memory played on a loop. Every cutting remark, every dismissive gesture. I questioned everything. Was he right? Was I truly incompetent? The self-doubt gnawed, but beneath it, a colder, more dangerous emotion began to stir, a calculated fury. This wasn't an isolated incident, it was the culmination of months, even years, of subtle undermining and gaslighting. The public display was merely the final, undeniable proof of a pattern. And with that realization, a plan, embryonic and terrifying, began to take root in the shadows of my mind. I returned to work the next day, a different person. Outwardly, I maintained composure, a mask of professionalism. Inwardly, I had become an observer, a meticulous chronicler. Every interaction, every email, every meeting became a potential piece of evidence. I started a private, encrypted digital folder. Its purpose, to document every single instance of his abusive behavior, his hypocrisy, his incompetence. The humiliation had stripped away my trust, but in its place, it had instilled an unbreakable commitment to justice. This was not about anger, it was about precision. 6 years. 6 long years, I maintained this silent vigil. I watched him, listened to him, and recorded him. Not with malice, but with a surgeon's detachment. I learned to anticipate his patterns, the favoritism, the unwarranted criticism, the credit he stole from others, the impossible demands he placed on his subordinates, the blatant disregard for company policy. Each entry in my folder was a tiny victory, a step towards a future where such behavior would not go unpunished. It was a marathon of patience, fueled by the memory of that night. The data began to paint a grim picture. It wasn't just my experience, his behavior was systemic. I had entries detailing his manipulation of project timelines, his misrepresentation of team achievements to senior leadership, and his creation of a consistently hostile work environment. The pattern was undeniable: a manager who thrived on intimidation and fear, who elevated himself by tearing down those below him. My folder grew, a digital testament to a corrosive reign. It was no longer just about me, it was about protecting everyone else under his thumb. My documentation included specific dates, times, and direct quotes. Copies of emails, screenshots of internal messages, even meticulously transcribed notes from meetings where his inappropriate comments were made. I catalogued instances where he publicly belittled others, just as he had done to me. I tracked the turnover rates in his department, which were significantly higher than the company average. This wasn't just anecdotal, it was quantifiable, verifiable data. This was a forensic examination of a career, built brick by toxic brick. Carrying this secret, this meticulous ledger of grievances, was a heavy burden. It demanded constant vigilance, a poker face in every interaction. There were moments of doubt, moments where I wondered if I was losing myself in this mission. But then, a memory of that ballroom, that chilling public spectacle, would resurface. It refueled my resolve. This wasn't about petty revenge, it was about accountability. It was about ensuring no one else endured the same calculated cruelty. My personal hurt had evolved into a broader sense of justice. The decision to act was not impulsive. It was a slow burn, ignited by countless small infractions, and finally reaching critical mass when a promising junior colleague, utterly demoralized, resigned after months of his relentless abuse. This was a person I had mentored, someone whose potential he had systematically crushed. That moment solidified my conviction. This toxicity had to end. I could no longer stand by, a silent witness. The time for observation was over. The time for action had arrived. The folder, now a formidable weapon, was ready. Before directly confronting him or going to HR, I quietly started building a network. Not of co-conspirators, but of witnesses. I began having discreet conversations with former colleagues from his department, those who had left, often citing cultural fit or new opportunities. Their stories, once whispered, now aligned chillingly with my documented evidence. They confirmed the pattern, reinforced the systemic nature of his behavior. Their validation was crucial. It transformed my individual grievance into a collective indictment, giving my case undeniable weight. I sought external counsel, a discreet consultation with a labor law expert. Not to file a lawsuit, not yet, but to understand the strength of my evidence, the legal implications, and the most effective way to present my case internally without jeopardizing my own position. The expert confirmed what I suspected: my meticulous documentation was far more compelling than most, demonstrating a clear pattern of hostile work environment and potentially even constructive dismissal for those who left. This validated my strategy and sharpened my focus. With my evidence marshaled and my strategy refined, I requested a meeting with the head of HR and a senior legal counsel. I walked into that room with a sense of calm, not anger. I presented my case methodically, unemotionally. I didn't accuse, I merely presented the facts, the dates, the emails, the documented patterns of abuse and misconduct spanning 6 years. The sheer volume and consistency of the evidence spoke for itself. I watched their faces as they scrolled through years of his carefully logged transgressions. The weight of it was undeniable. I understood the risk. Accusing a senior executive, even with compelling evidence, could backfire spectacularly. But I had prepared for this. My own performance reviews were impeccable. I had no history of insubordination or complaints. My motivation, I articulated clearly, was to protect the company's integrity and its employees from a destructive force. This wasn't personal vendetta, it was a professional intervention. The air in the room was thick with unspoken tension, as the implications of my presentation settled in. It was a high-stakes gamble. HR and legal counsel promised a thorough, confidential investigation. I knew it wouldn't be swift. Such processes rarely are. But the seed was planted. I returned to my work, maintaining my composure, watching. The atmosphere in the office shifted subtly. My boss, initially oblivious, began to seem a little more stressed, a little less jovial. The swagger in his step diminished. Rumors, vague and unsubstantiated, began to circulate, whispers of an internal review. The wheels of corporate justice, slow but inexorable, had begun to turn. Over the next few weeks, I was called in for follow-up interviews. Each time, I reiterated my facts, provided additional details, and referenced the precise dates in my documentation. HR also began interviewing former and current team members, discreetly. The evidence I provided gave them a roadmap. It became clear that the stories, once isolated, now formed a coherent, damning narrative. The boss's kingdom, built on fear and intimidation, was beginning to crumble under the weight of corroborated truth. The pressure on him must have been immense, though unseen by most. Then, one Monday morning, he wasn't there. His office door was closed, his calendar mysteriously empty. A terse internal memo announced that he was on leave, effective immediately, to pursue other opportunities. The corporate euphemism was unmistakable. There was no fanfare, no public statement of wrongdoing, just a quiet, almost imperceptible disappearance. The 200 employees who witnessed my public humiliation would not see him escorted out, they would simply find his presence, abruptly, erased. It was a silent coup, executed with surgical precision. The Whisper network, always active in large corporations, went into overdrive. But this time, the whispers weren't about my failures, they were about his. Rumors of a serious internal investigation and multiple complaints circulated. The official story of other opportunities quickly dissolved under the weight of truth. Employees who had suffered in silence finally felt a sense of vindication. The air in his former department, once heavy with tension, visibly lightened. A collective sigh of relief, unspoken but deeply felt, permeated the organization. I felt no outward triumph, no urge to gloat. The satisfaction was internal, profound. This wasn't about revenge in its rawest form. It was about justice, painstakingly extracted. He was gone. His capacity to inflict harm, to demean, to destroy careers and morale, had been unequivocally removed. The system, slow as it was, had worked. And it had worked because of 6 years of unwavering commitment to truth, to documentation, to holding power accountable. The silence of his departure was, in its own way, louder than any public condemnation. A few weeks later, I was called into a private meeting with the CEO and the head of HR. They thanked me, not in explicit terms for bringing down a senior executive, but for my dedication to company values and courage in fostering a positive work environment. There was an unspoken understanding. They knew. They understood the integrity of my actions. They offered me a promotion, a significant expansion of my role, and a substantial raise. It wasn't merely a reward, it was an acknowledgement of my resilience and my unwavering commitment. The weight that had pressed down on me for so long, the burden of his continued presence and the memory of that public shaming, began to lift. I could breathe again. The office, once a place of quiet tension, felt lighter, more collaborative. Trust began to rebuild. For the first time in a very long time, I felt truly empowered, not by vengeance, but by the quiet satisfaction of upholding a principle. It was a victory not just for me, but for the countless others who had suffered under his toxic leadership. A heavy chapter had closed. My new role offered challenges and opportunities that reignited my passion. I led my team with an emphasis on respect, transparency, and genuine collaboration, values that had been conspicuously absent under my former boss. I saw firsthand the positive impact of a healthy work culture, a stark contrast to the fear-driven environment he had cultivated. This was my true reward, not just the title or the salary, but the ability to shape a better, more ethical space for others to thrive. I had not just destroyed a career, I had helped build a better future. This experience taught me invaluable lessons about resilience, patience, and the silent power of truth. It underscored the importance of documentation, not as a tool for vengeance, but as an essential safeguard against abuse. It revealed that even in the face of overwhelming power, an individual, armed with facts and unwavering resolve, can bring about profound change. This wasn't a story of overnight success, but of meticulous, painstaking effort over years. It was a testament to the long game, played with precision and principle. The true cost of his toxic leadership wasn't just measured in my humiliation, or the demoralization of his team. It was in lost potential, in suppressed creativity, in the human toll of an environment built on fear. My actions, though driven by a deeply personal slight, ultimately served a larger purpose: to dismantle a system that allowed such behavior to flourish. The satisfaction wasn't in seeing him fall, but in knowing that the ground was cleared for growth, for a healthier culture. This was the quiet revolution. My story isn't unique. Countless individuals face similar challenges, often feeling powerless against entrenched corporate hierarchies. But what I hope my experience offers is a blueprint that quiet, persistent, well-documented resistance can indeed lead to monumental change. It requires courage, yes, but more importantly, it requires strategy, patience, and an unwavering belief in your own integrity. It's a call to action for anyone enduring a similar struggle, a reminder that the seemingly insurmountable can, with time and effort, be overcome. The most potent weapon in my arsenal was not anger, but patience. 6 years felt like an eternity at times, but each passing day added another layer of irrefutable truth to my case. It allowed patterns to become undeniable, isolated incidents to form a coherent narrative. Hasty action often leads to incomplete results. The slow, deliberate accumulation of facts ensures that when the moment to act arrives, the foundation is so solid, the evidence so overwhelming, that resistance becomes futile. Patience transforms a fleeting grievance into an unassailable truth. The departure of my former boss sent ripples throughout the organization. It signaled a shift, a quiet yet profound message that such behavior would no longer be tolerated. Other managers, perhaps those who had indulged in similar, albeit less egregious, conduct, became noticeably more mindful of their interactions. It created a ripple effect, promoting a healthier culture from the top down. True change often begins with one brave act, one person willing to stand up, quietly and strategically, against injustice. This was that ripple. Looking back, there are no regrets. The choice I made, born from humiliation and forged in years of silent resolve, was the right one. Not just for my career, but for my conscience. To have remained silent, to have allowed that pattern of abuse to continue, would have been a deeper wound than any public shaming. Sometimes, the path to justice is long and solitary, paved with quiet perseverance. But the destination, the restoration of dignity and the establishment of accountability, is worth every single step. It truly was served cold. Today, the company thrives with a revitalized culture. Feedback mechanisms are stronger, avenues for reporting misconduct are clearer, and leadership is visibly more engaged in fostering a supportive environment. It's a testament to the fact that even deeply ingrained toxic patterns can be broken, given the right impetus. My story is a stark reminder that employees are not powerless, and that their collective well-being is intrinsically linked to the health of the organization. A new era has dawned, brighter and more equitable. While the initial spark was personal humiliation, the mission quickly transcended mere vengeance. It evolved into a fight for ethical leadership and a respectful workplace. The profound satisfaction came not from seeing him suffer, but from witnessing the positive transformation within the company, knowing that my actions contributed to a safer, fairer environment for everyone. This story is a testament to how personal pain, when channeled strategically, can become a catalyst for systemic improvement. It's a lesson for leaders and employees alike. It's important to state, this path is not for the faint of heart. It requires immense emotional fortitude, a deep understanding of corporate dynamics, and meticulous attention to detail. This isn't a call for rash action or petty grievances, but a strategic approach to undeniable, persistent abuse. My intention is not to incite, but to inform and empower those who feel trapped, to show that there can be a way forward, even against overwhelming odds. Choose your battles wisely, but fight them with unwavering commitment. I became, unwittingly, an architect of change. My quiet observations and diligent documentation laid the groundwork for a necessary overhaul. The scaffolding of his power, once formidable, collapsed under the weight of accumulated truth. This transformation wasn't instantaneous, it was a slow, deliberate dismantling, piece by agonizing piece. But the result was undeniable: a foundation rebuilt on integrity, a culture reborn from the ashes of toxicity. And the satisfaction? It remains, quiet and profound, the triumph of endurance over arrogance. The story, though never explicitly detailed by the company, became part of its informal lore. It served as a cautionary tale for those in positions of power, and an inspirational one for employees. It taught everyone that a truly unhealthy environment carries its own seeds of destruction. And that sometimes, the quietest individuals possess the most formidable power. This was not just a personal victory, it was a blueprint for organizational resilience, a reminder that corporate health relies on the integrity of all its parts. The ripple continues to spread, subtly shaping the future. To anyone who has faced similar public humiliation, or suffered under toxic leadership, know this: your story matters. Your dignity is inviolable. And while the path to justice may be long and arduous, it is not impossible. Collect your evidence. Build your case. And when the time is right, act with precision and principle. Because sometimes, the most profound victories are won not with a shout, but with a quiet, unwavering resolve, delivering a reckoning that is, truly, served cold. Thank you for watching.